Hi, this is for Monday, January 11th for 11th grade English. I'm going to talk you through our agenda here. Our big focus of today is on Robert E. Lee. So on Friday, we looked at the Union forces led by Lawrence Chamberlain in the particular troop regiment that we saw in the Killer Angels. The entire Union forces were led by General Meade at the Battle of Gettysburg. And today, we'll look at the Southern perspective. So before we move to Lee, we'll look backwards at the Union, and then we'll move into a little bit more about Gettysburg. I want to fill out this guide, this new note-taking guide, with you here on the video, and then I'll delete it for class, because this should be able to help you as you move into your final, which is the rhetorical précis. What I'd like to do with each text that we do as a class is fill out these details about what claims are it making, is it making, what support, what purpose, what audience, and all of those pieces are what you need to fill out the précis. There's no reason it should be secret. You can use this. It's all meant to be something we discuss together. So this collaborative effort should support you as you move into your more individualized execution of those ideas. So thinking back to chapter 2, what we read on Friday of the Killer Angels, where Chamberlain is explaining what the army fights for, I want to think about a claim. And I write claim sentence 1 ideas because there's so many claims you can make. So I'm just going to pick one that comes to mind for me. In this, Shara, who's the author of the book, I should write that here, The Killer Angels, by Michael Shara. He is claiming something about the Union Army. And our job is to understand what is that thing. So I'll say Charlotte claims the Union fought to resist. I'm going to call it aristocracy. This is a big idea that shows up a lot in the Killer Angels, that the people who were leading the Northern fight believed it was their job to resist an implantation of European ideas onto our new nation. What is the support for that claim? Chamberlain, again and again in his speech, says we fight for each other, for no one else. So this idea of equality. And I think that's the purpose. So Shara is highlighting the purpose of the war for Union forces, which is to fight for equality. Not just the equality between who were currently enslaved, Black people in America, and white people, though that was critical, but equality among all men and men, women would come later, among all men, the right to do what they wanted with their own lives, regardless of what their fathers might have done. That seems to be driving Shara's main argument. Who is this for? I think he writes, He writes for people who believe that the war was about power and territory. He wants to persuade them otherwise. When you get into conversations like this, it's not like there's a right answer. Shara believes the war was about something with equality, fighting for an ideal. Plenty of people will point to economic reasons for the North wanting to hold on to the South. It's not that they're wrong. It's just that, in his opinion, Shara believes this other force to be more powerful. So what we've created here is a nice structure that could easily become a paragraph. We'll do this every day. Today, we'll look at Lee, like I said. So I'm going to segue into our slides for the day, Civil War and Memory Day 2. And this is linked to your document there. I'm going to get into the Battle of Gettysburg a little bit. since that's what the book The Killer Angels is about. So I'm going to end this class today by directing you to chapter 6, but first let's lay the scene a little bit better for the battle. So the Battle of Gettysburg was, like we said last time, this major turning point in the war. The Union won, the North won. After that battle, President Lincoln gave his famous address, this Gettysburg Address, this speech at the battlefield. He gave it about 6 months after the war, or the battle was over, November, so not quite 6 months. His speech described the Civil War as a struggle to preserve a nation that was dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal, and that the government was ruled by a people, for a people, of the people. He said America was one nation, and the states cannot freely leave that nation. The Union rests on everybody remaining in the Union. None can leave. That oath, that coming together. Here's a real photo from the address. The people gathered here are gathered to watch Lincoln speak. Can't see Lincoln, but it's all taken at the actual battlefield months after it had concluded. Here it is. Here's the speech. And I can play it for you now. I'm going to make sure my picture doesn't disrupt the words. So hold on one moment. So listening for words about unity, listening for words that capture how Lincoln believed that you couldn't.
The Gettysburg Address by Abraham Lincoln, November 19th, 1863. 67 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But, in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
All right. So famous speech. If you were in U.S. history this semester, you've already studied this, or you will study this short speech. Lincoln wrote this as he rode the train from D.C. up to Pennsylvania. And there's really incredible rhetorical devices at work. The way that he repeats, we cannot, we cannot, we cannot, and the limitations of speaking after a battle that is fought. It's like speaking about any great contest. The real contest is in the fighting. So he's aware of that. But he has these ideals that he says at the end that drive the Union still towards their goal of drawing the South back into the Union. He says that we have to resolve. This nation today will have a new birth of freedom. So this is a second American Revolution. But this time we're fighting for the government that we made to stay intact after its first great test. Because if the Civil War were to have been lost by the Union, it wouldn't be the death simply of the South from the Union. It would be the death of the United States and the beginning of some other thing. The United States is based on the idea that the states remain in the Union, that you can loosely hold together some disparate regions with some ideals. That's the whole idea. And so he knows that in this speech. That is the point that he's trying to make. And so we'll see Lee struggle with that. Why is it so important? Well, it gives a vision for America's future, and it tells you why he believes the war was being fought. We'll move to key battle number 3 later. Lee is so critical to all of this, not just because he led the forces, but because of the personality of the man. He was revered, the best loved man in both armies. It was said in the Killer Angels. He was the Confederate general of the Army of Northern Virginia, so a specific portion of the army, but he ended up leading the most important part of the army. And he was the head commander. He is the one who urged the Southerners to accept defeat in 1865. They could have continued in a guerrilla warfare style for maybe ever, but he is the one who stopped and said, I surrender and we need to end this. We've lost. Lee did not want to fight on after the Battle of Appomattox. But we're not there yet. In this excerpt for class today, it's Lee considering what he will do in the Battle of Gettysburg. So we're going back in time to the moments where he is trying to decide what move to make on the field. The chapter that you are reading for async time today is his thought process from his perspective. So it's that limited narration. We talk about omniscient narration, limited narration. The whole book is omniscient because we see inside of many minds. This chapter is just Lee, and it's third person because it's him speaking with Lee and he instead of I. So to read it, I'm going to leave you with it. Click on chapter 6 here and flip to page 202. You're going to continue reading until you get to the end of that chapter where you'll see a new name appear. And the stem, once you're done with the reading, is Lee led the Confederate Army. Colonel claims, you want to expand it to try to show what you think is most important about that colonel sentence. And that's what carries us to the end of class today. So thank you very much for your attention. I'll see you tomorrow.